Hello gang, Omni here. I talked about this the other day on the Spider-Man Far From Home review that, it was really hard to talk about that movie without getting into spoilers. And you know what? This is the first one we're doing. We're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and leave now. Come back when you've seen it if you like. And I've got a couple of notes to go over some of the things that I kind of gathered up today that I wanted to cover. First thing, like I was saying that this movie was extremely tied to the MCU or Iron Man. It really is. Almost down to the whole central conflict is another person or people scorned by Tony Stark taking out their frustrations and anger and, all of that on his works, his legacy, and that being Peter in this movie. Jake Gyllenhaal is Mysterio, and if you know anything about the comics or the animated series or just anything about Spider-Man in general, or Mysterio is the bad guy. We got the trailer showed, I can't remember who put this. I think it was like Nostalgia Critic that put it like this. It was like, there's two people in suits in this film and one of them's the good guy. So who does that leave you with? I mean, we all kind of thought that going into it, but with the whole them presenting this concept of the multiverse after the snap, anything can happen at this point. So there was still a part of me, a little part of me that was like, what if this is actually an alternate reality Mysterio that's good? Wouldn't that be one way to subvert expectations? But then you got to think about it too, that the majority of people that go and watch these films are casual fans. There are a lot of hardcore comic book, Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man fans that go to see these movies. But I think the vast majority of the people that pay for their tickets to go watch these films have no idea what's going on. Or this is their introduction to a lot of these characters, especially younger people. This will be their first iterations of a lot of these characters. And, I went with somebody who was not familiar with it. And, when the trailer came out, I had turned and talked to them before about it. And I was like, you know what, man, is he really the good guy? Because in the comics, he's evil. And they didn't know that. And throughout the movie, they were just looking at me like, I like this movie, but I would like it a lot more if you didn't tell me that. Because throughout the entire movie, I'm like, is this when he turns? Is this when he turns? Because this, after the death of Tony Stark, Spider-Man Peter Parker he's missing his mentor. He's missing that guiding compass that he had that was helping him better himself as a hero, as a person, and helping him get these opportunities and such like that. And this is still a 16-year-old kid dealing with all these issues, and he doesn't know how to make the right decisions. He's not the Peter Parker we know from the comic books yet. He's not the Spider-Man that will go at all costs. He's a torn child with torn wants, needs, desires, dreams, all the dreams a kid his age would have. And he wants to have a normal life. And on top of that, he does love being Spider-Man. And I don't feel that he would give that up. Not this version of the character, but there's this feeling that, these things that are happening are above him. He's just as he said before, even in Infinity War, I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And this is just like, he acknowledges that what's happening with these elementals, despite what we learn later, that, if they were real, spoilers, they're not. They are illusions created by Mysterio and his technology and his tech team of former Stark employees, which was hilarious to discover. That exposition scene was just ridiculous to the point where I forgave it for being so in your face, just pure exposition. I found it entertaining, just like the snap. I think there should have been a more gradual turn to Jake Gyllenhaal's reveal as the villain. But it worked in the long run, but like the thing that worked about the chemistry is like Jake Gyllenhaal is such a good actor, and he pulls off this heroic mentor persona that he creates for Peter, and so believably that I'm like, man, I'm not seeing any hints that this guy might be actually bad. And that's just to credit him that, you know, he's just like really selling it to the point where, like I said before, I was like, oh, maybe this might actually be an alternate world Mysterio that actually is good. But, you know, it doesn't work out that way. You know, a bunch of conveniences and, you know, Peter really wanting to shuck his responsibilities. Again, being a child, he doesn't believe in himself enough to think that the glass is Edith, which Tony had left for him in his will for Peter to have, which controls the Stark network, which has satellite access to pretty much all technology and communications on the globe, as well as a like drone police force that he has access to, which is really what Mysterio is after, which really is just like really convenient that, you know, it falls into place exactly to where he gets what he was after, really. And Peter, you know, again, doesn't feel like he really has earned any of this. He feels guilty for Iron Man and Tony Stark's fall. He feels like there's part of him that is responsible for it. And throughout the entire film, there's murals, there's people always talking about Tony, who's the next Iron Man, and all this stuff, and it's really, really weighing down on Peter throughout the movie, and he just doesn't think that it's really meant for him. He's so convinced that he's not ready for this that he doesn't believe, he believes that the message was for him to find who the glasses should go to and not actually be his. So, rather than go contact any of the other Avengers, the ones that are on world, like the Hulk, or Ant-Man, it's just like, I mean, they name a couple, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, they mention Thor, none of them are able to be found. And, you know, he's just like, he's met this guy for literally not even a day yet, but after a couple of conversations, which had me fooled, not fooled, but like doubting whether or not he was actually going to end up being the villain. Peter was, I think Peter's fragile state of mind at that point made him make a decision that in the end resulted in the consequences that we will talk about later. Mysterio is creating these illusions with these drones and this like hologram technology. We find out he was actually the ones that created Barf in Civil War, the hologram technology that Tony Stark was showing off, where he was kind of going back into his repressed memories and all of that. They use this technology to create these really lifelike holograms, and he, after the snap, or as they call it, the blip in this, he's so convinced, and rightfully so, that after all the strange, crazy things that have happened in the past 10 years in the MCU, that people would just believe anything. And he just fed them this BS about multiple universes and all this stuff, and they used their own science know-how, everybody being ex-Stark employees, scientists, all that kind of stuff. They replicate the results in the world to kind of support their argument and their story, to the point where it convinces our Nick Fury that, you know, what they're saying is true, but it's complete BS. And the drones that are projecting the hologram are also weaponized with different things, flamethrowers, pulse cannons, and stuff like that, to simulate these elemental attacks and onslaughts while projecting these images. Mysterio himself isn't even actually the one flying around shooting the lasers and all of that stuff. That's also a projection. And he uses his talents to sneak in at the right moments to blend in with the illusion, to give the effect that he's coming in and out of these situations. And it's really done very well. And that's what they get right about Mysterio. The psychosis, the character, what he does. There's some sequences in this where he creates these illusions, these nightmare sequences, that are just visually astounding and just what you would want right off the page on from the comic book into this. It made me really reminiscent of some of the classic Scarecrow illusions that you would see in like the old Batman comics and Arkham Knight and all of that stuff. Really greatly done, to the point where I was like, man, I actually would love to see some of this trippy stuff in 3D. And that's what I was talking about in the original review. However, when you think about it, they use these pre-rendered models and designs and scenarios that they have plotted out, staged, scripted, and, you know, set up with the elementals, that when you realize that's how they put it together, because you see them later kind of editing their sequence and speeding things up, adding more destruction, adding a little more detail now that they have some more drones. And when you think about it, after you know that process, when he actively is playing illusions against Peter that are personalized for Peter, you have to really turn off your brain and just accept it for the coolness that it is, because that's all it is. And I mean, in the comics too, there's no way he can actually set those up. It's just really interesting for how they play and use that. There's so many illusions within illusions where, like, there's a point where I'm not sure where the scenes end, because it all falls out into like a real thing that they use as like a fake out, so that you're doubting if you're real, or Peter is tricked and thinks he's finally out of the illusion when he's actually still part of it. And it really like comes down to, like, it really starts to break him down to the point where he doesn't really know what's real, and Mysterio gets the edge on him to the point where he backs up in this illusion and gets hit in the real world by a train. And, you know, we know a train wouldn't take out Peter. Mysterio doesn't double check any of the times he thinks Peter's dead. And, you know, Peter survives that train, and man, he is like shocked and just shaken to the core from these events. And there's like one of the images in there is a armored zombie Tony Stark that crawls out of his grave with spiders pouring out of his eyes. And you see like the broken Iron Man mask with the skull underneath rotted. And it was really messed up, man. He was really playing on Peter's fears and all of that stuff in these moments. And it really showed that, like, Peter in this moment, knowing that now that Mysterio has this power, has these drones to create these more elaborate illusions, he doesn't know what's going to happen, which leads up to one of the best scenes where he doesn't know what to do. And he calls Happy, who lands and meets him in the Netherlands, where he has ended up because of the train, where there's this moment where they just stop in the film. He's like, no, Happy, tell me something only you would know. And like, he is like shaken. Tom Holland, his performances in this movie are off the charts. No matter what you think about his particular Spider-Man, he sells everything. He is freaking amazing in this. This is the best I've ever seen him act. And this is one of the best moments where he's just like, so once Happy finally convinces him with this little porn moment where he's like, you remember when we were in that one place in Germany and the bill kind of had some porno on it? I know that was you. And like, he was like, man, it was just so emotional, because you really see throughout this movie how every decision, everything, not on top of like the regret and remorse of Tony Stark's loss, how much this is tearing down on Peter's mind and his mental state. And I think that is primarily the reason all of this stress, all of those issues, the loss of Tony, his self-doubts, all of this is why his Spidey sense has been on the flicker the whole time, or as they call it, the Peter tingle, which they say that quite more frequently than I would have liked. But they never straight out explain it, but I wish they kind of would have. It would have made things make a little more sense, but that's what I gather, at least. That's what I can surmise from the plot, that like, it doesn't really come back until he is at peace with what he's done, what he's doing, and what he needs to do. And there's another great moment after Happy picks him up where we kind of see it in some of the trailers where he's in the jet, he's in the workroom where he's crafting his new suit. And this is where he really starts to like go in, and like Happy sees his best friend come to life as he's using Tony's stuff, just like Tony would. And it was just such a emotional, like, hit you right in the heart moment. Like, there's so many of those in this movie too, at least for me, that I got really emotional and worked up in it. And he makes this suit and he customizes it to what he needs for this situation, and you really get to see the ingenuity back again for Peter and what he's doing. And it's just fantastic. The final suit is really great too. MJ in this has a lot more time to shine as well. And as we see in the trailer, there's that moment where, I wish they didn't spoil it, but where she calls him out for being Spider-Man. Some of the later trailers, they threw in this like, haha, just kidding thing that actually didn't end up being in it. And, you know, she straight up just says like, oh no, you're Spider-Man. And she ends up being right. And he like, he fiddles with it, tries to convince her he's wrong. And then he falls into it. She witnesses his little fight with them in Prague against one of the elementals. And while he was fighting it, one of his webs, I guess, nicked one of the drones inside of it and shot one of the projectors off of it into an alley, which she picked up. Because they were trying to play it off like he was some European ripoff of Spider-Man. And she calls him out. She found it and she shows it to Peter. And she's like, so you're telling me you and Night Monkey, as they call him in his black suit, use the same webs? And he was like, and she catches him on it. She drops it, and then conveniently it plays like the holo projection. And then he's like, oh no, I messed up. That's when he realizes that Mysterio is actually the problem and what he's doing. And, you know, he just 180s and admits straight to her, okay, I'm Spider-Man. I messed up. Let's just skip past this. I have to go now. And it was great. I know a lot of people have a problem with that because a lot of this new Peter Parker Spider-Man storyline is really going out of its way to kind of turn on the heads, just like subvert completely or do something completely different than the two separate iterations of Spider-Man we've already had. We've had the back and forth secret identity. I can't tell you because I got to give you up for love and blah, blah, blah. We've seen it. It's just something different. They want to do something different. And I know a lot of people that rubs them the wrong way. That's not how their Spider-Man works. But I think it works in this version and in this universe for the Marvel cinematic universe. The way they've built and crafted the world, I think it works. And she gets a lot more time to shine. Her personality is fleshed out a lot more. And their chemistry in general, though it's not played out enough because of the action and the set pieces and all that takes a lot of the center stage, there's a lot of great moments between the characters. And speaking of those moments, the action in this is better than I've seen in any Spider-Man film. The action, the third act of this is freaking phenomenal and beautiful and amazing to watch. You see in the moments of all of these fights how Peter not only has to strategize how he's fighting these people, how he pieces together and fights and just pieces together all of these different iterations while simultaneously being attacked, while dodging bullets, while attacking, piecing together flaws and weaknesses in their systems. Like, it really does a great job of showing off how intelligent this Spider-Man is. And that's how he is in the comics, which I don't feel like we've completely got in one of the... I think the closest we got to something similar to this was in Amazing Spider-Man 2, when Andrew Garfield is stopping Electro from accidentally electrocuting all of those people in Times Square, and you see time slow down, and he's like, this is what I gotta do to save all these people from all these individual lightning bolts. I think that was the only other closest time. But then what sets this apart too, I think, is that there's parts where he has to overcome his own limitations to get around these situations. He runs out of webs at one point. Web fluid runs out in the middle of the fight, and he has to makeshift a way to continue to fight the drones. He grabs a sign and salvages the core from one of them to create this like bandolier kind of bola that he kind of turns into his own little Thor's hammer for a moment, and that he uses to take a couple of them out, and then uses the shield to bounce himself up to Mysterio off a shockwave, and boom, boom stuff, explosions. Like, it really shows like just the craftiness and ingenuity and intelligence of the character to a point we haven't seen before. And it's a lot of fun, and I think it has you on the edge of your seat throughout most of it. From there, we get the Peter. The Peter Tingle comes back, Spidey sense, when he's finally confronting Jake Gyllenhaal, Mysterio, in a hallway where he's in the suit that he uses to record himself and create and control the illusions. He just flips and starts sending all the drones at him. He blacks out the hallway using the illusions and the hologram so that Peter can't see. All the drones cloak themselves, and Peter, knowing what he has to do, setting aside all of his doubts, he just takes in a breath and, just like Luke Skywalker running the trench, dives and uses the Force to take out all of these drones and get his way to Mysterio and take him out. And it was freaking epic. And then he knocks him out. You find out he's been shot, wounded, because he just wanted to take out Peter so bad that he put himself in the line of fire of the drones and got hit. And, he plays out this scene with him, telling him about how he's going to play out in the long run. He's going to see how the world turns against him or something like that, as he kind of pretends to die. And then you just see Peter like perk up, and then wah, as a gunshot goes off from a hand that was behind him that was invisible. And it shows out the dying him was just another illusion, another hologram. And then the real Jake Gyllenhaal was behind him, still shot, but trying to like Hitman style execute Peter Parker on that bridge, and just failing to do so still. And Peter saves the day. Everybody has their little moment. Everybody goes back to New York, and MJ and Peter go on their little swing through New York, and they have their little romantic moment. And then we go to credits, and then is the infamous mid-credit scene, which is actually the end of the movie. And when I was talking about how like this movie has you going through all kinds of emotions, and then it flips a switch on you right at the end with the mid-credit scene. Or I didn't specify that the mid-credit scene did it, I don't think. And when that happens, it completely puts a different mindset and spin on the whole movie. You see J.K. Simmons reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson for just a brief moment on one of the teleprompters, one of the digital screens on the side of one of the buildings in New York, just as Peter puts down MJ to kind of, in their little swing date. It comes up, and he's like, "This live from the video. We got this video," and he plays this recording that shows Mysterio using this technology, and we see like after he dies that one of the people behind the scenes that helped him create the illusions, that was part of his team, takes this USB flash drive out of their disc, and like only Jake Gyllenhaal is the one that gets caught. And so I'm assuming that they edit the footage from that was recording while Peter was taking him out, and they doctor it to make it look like Peter was the one controlling the drones, and that he killed Mysterio, which the world doesn't know what happened, so they still think the Mysterio is the savior that has been helping them against this threat. And then he shows Peter's face. He tells the entire world in this video that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And this happens in the comics, but at least in the comics, in Civil War, which is when it happens, he does it of his own accord. And it does bite him in the butt later because of that, because of his enemies find his loved ones, attack, and an assassin takes out Aunt May, which leads to a whole different roundabout of different things. But this is the thing that sets this on a much different course, and which is why it kind of bothers me the most, is because Peter is still a kid. He hasn't even graduated high school yet. Peter Parker, when his identity gets revealed to the world in the comics, he's a full-on adult. He's graduated college. He has a job. all of these opportunities and safety nets to fall back on, or at least to have him in a place where he can be safer, smarter, or have more experience to handle these things. He's a kid. He's still in school. He hasn't gone to college. He hasn't even had a job yet. If they don't resolve this in some off-the-wall thing, or be like, oh, no, that's fake, or something like that, or as the post-credit scene, maybe they'll use some scrolls to rewrite what happened or put a different spin on that and convince people that Peter Parker is not Spider-Man. I don't know what's going to happen there, because Peter is a kid. He won't be able to go back to school. He's going to be a felon. He's going to be a fugitive. He's going to be on the run. He doesn't have a job. He hasn't been to college. He's going to lose his entire life if that doesn't get fixed and rectified, because there's always been like a Spider-Man has been hated by the city because of lies, things about him, but he still persisted through it all, but he was still able to live because of his secret identity as Peter Parker. Spider-Man has been hated in the city before, and that's been fine. They haven't been the same thing at the same time before, and this is a completely different scenario and a much more threatening thing for what before the credits was a happy ending. They completely destroy Peter's potential for a future outside of high school. And it really left me feeling really awful, because like Peter Parker and Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters, and I was really emotionally invested in this storyline, and then I was just like, he can't do anything now. And like I was like, I need to see the next movie. I need to see it now, but why? Where is it? How long are we going to have to wait? How is he going to get through this? How are they going to survive this? And like I said, maybe some Skrulls will come in, because the post-credit scene shows us that Nick Fury, Jesus, I am just all over the place with just flubbing my words here just because I can't stop going off. But like, man, Nick Fury and Maria Hill throughout this entire movie, we found out were actually Talos and his wife, the Skrulls, while the real Sam Jackson was off in space with the rest of the Skrulls, kind of patrolling the cosmos, presumably setting up SWORD, which is the offensive cosmic branch of SHIELD in the comics, where SHIELD is stationed on Earth to protect it from extraterrestrial threats. SWORD is meant to go out and seek out those threats preemptively, and that's what we can assume they were doing. And Sam Jackson, the real one, has been up there. Now, how long has he been there? How long has Talos been Sam Jackson? Who else might be Skrulls? I know some people were wondering if this is going to be how they bring Robert Downey Jr. back into it. It was like, no. A Skrull was pretending to be Tony when he killed himself. And I don't think that'll be the case. That would just completely cheapen that. And I'm pretty confident that if we see Tony, it'll only be in small little cameo moments or flashbacks if he ever decides to come back and do some more stuff. I don't think they'll ever just straight bring him back. And, speaking of the hunted Peter, there's been so much talk about Kraven the Hunter that if they introduce him into this universe, that would be a perfect storyline to have him, like, not only, I don't know how it would play up with his kind of code, but have him, after the world is not only hunting Spider-Man, the authorities are hunting Spider-Man, his enemies are going to be hunting Spider-Man. This could bring out the ultimate hunter out and introduce him into the MCU. The first time we see him on screen, and have Kraven the Hunter actually trying to track him down, either as a bounty hunter or, trying to catch him himself before he loses the opportunity, before somebody else gets to him first. That would be really interesting, especially since they've really been trying to avoid doing any of the Spider-Man villains that we've seen before in the MCU versions. So that would be really interesting. That was my thoughts on it. Aside from that, I'm not sure what else the post-credit scene is going to be setting up as far as the Skrulls' involvement in Nick Fury, except for I know that I think Kevin Feige has hinted that Phase 4 and onward will be focusing more on the cosmic than on the terrestrial threats. So I'm curious to see if that's all that means, because I'm not sure what else that's going to be, because the Skrulls are still effectively working with the humans, with the people, with Earth and all that stuff. So I don't think that they can still set up Secret Invasion in this way, but who knows? I mean, the future is whatever it wants to be at this point. Whatever Kevin Feige wants to do, it's got to happen in some way, some fashion. It'll just whatever. I love this movie. Like I said, I think the biggest faults in it is just kind of the logic leaps and the fact that it is not really a Spider-Man film. It's Spider-Man in a Iron Man film. The villains, just like with the Vulture, was somebody Stark Industries screwed over. And again, Spider-Man's villains in this are more people that were like screwed over completely by Tony. All of his ex-employees banding together to just wreak havoc on the planet and be perceived as heroes when they're orchestrating all of these events. I would really like for us to kind of get away from Tony Stark so Peter can be Spider-Man. Get out from under that shadow, because they're really, really trying to force that, like, Peter is going to be the next Iron Man, or he's going to fill those shoes. Maybe one day. I mean, Spider-Man in the comics is regarded as the greatest hero on Earth by almost all of the heroes in the comics. And eventually, I feel like this Peter will definitely get there. But at this point, he's still a kid. He's still a 16-year-old kid in high school who is now wanted for murder and for orchestrating terrorist-level threats, and can't go back to school or be safe with any of his loved ones. His loved ones all being targets now. Will Flash like Peter now that everybody knows that Peter is Spider-Man and Flash loves Spider-Man? The big questions, guys. The big questions. Anyway, guys, I don't know how much longer I can talk about all of this, but that's it. So if you guys have seen the movie, which I would assume so by this point, let me know what you thought about all of this, the things that I brought up. If there's anything that I missed that you would like to talk about, we can talk about it in the comments, because I do try to respond to everybody that replies or comments on the pages. Man, I tried to take down notes for everything I wanted to mention, and, you know, I think I hit everything, but like I said, if I missed something, let me know. If you disagree with me on anything, let me know as well, because I'd love to just carry on these conversations. And if you like this video, support the channel by hitting that like button, subscribing, and commenting down below. If you didn't like it, make sure to tell me what you didn't like in the comments as well, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody.